If you're an introvert, you've probably asked yourself this question at least once, and that is, why are some introverts so successful in what seem to be extrovert-dominated spaces, and other introverts seem to struggle to even get out of their shell? Some of those spaces might be like finance, entrepreneurship, and we'll throw another one out there, professional sports. So in today's video, I'm going to address this enigma once and for all from a perspective of an introverted entrepreneur. And I'm also going to give you guys 3 key principles that I personally try to stick by to ensure that I'm achieving a healthier and more sustainable version of success as an introvert. So first off, let's just start off by recognizing the extrovert ideal that's so prevalent in Western business circles. And I think most people already acknowledge this and recognize this, and that's the super outspoken business leader that makes very, very quick snap decisions on the fly, very good at speaking off the cuff, very good at communicating with others, very charismatic, and just generally a really good motivator and team player. And it's interesting because the further east you go generally, the more you find that that doesn't really have to be the case. So for example, in countries like Japan and Korea, it's a lot less often that those same extroverted figures and personalities will achieve the same levels of high status and high success in a field like business and entrepreneurship. So I think it's primarily a Western thing, and you definitely don't have to fall into those same requirements to be just as successful. Even if society and culture doesn't teach that you have the same abilities to reach those same levels of success, the underlying skills and strengths and advantages you have as an introvert over extroverts don't change. And one of those strengths, which is actually well documented, is the difference between the introvert and the extrovert's response to dopamine. And in particular, how that responds to risk, reward, sensitivity, and perception, as well as how introverts and extroverts perform under pressure and in very emotionally high-strung situations. So like I said, there's several studies done on this, and I'm gonna go ahead and link those in the description just like last time. So the core of the matter is this. With introverts, we tend to be a lot less dopamine sensitive, meaning if we're anticipating some sort of big win or big event, we don't get riled up as easily, we don't get excited as easily, and therefore we don't really make as many emotional decisions. Whereas with extroverts, they are a lot more sensitive to that dopamine effect, and therefore they're more primed and willing and faster to react to potential highs. Now, this can work well in the extrovert's advantage, but also in certain situations, it could be a huge disadvantage. If an introvert and extrovert are placed in the exact same situation, let's say they're anticipating a big client close, the introvert is a lot less likely to react emotionally and to start thinking way ahead of themselves. So to make it tangible for you guys, we're a lot less likely to start thinking about the money that it'll bring in. We'll be a lot less likely to think about what the money can buy and what the result can be in our lives. We're still gonna feel a certain level of excitement. It's just not as high, and it's almost always tamped down by a sense of rationality, a sense of calm. So you can think of this as our fundamental advantage, our ability to perceive risk reward in a very neutral light, even in more emotionally high-strung situations. Whereas with the extrovert, the same can't always be said. The amygdala, which usually regulates some of our more base and emotional desires, is usually regulated by a part called the neocortex. And for introverts, I think the neocortex does a lot better of a job in regulating the amygdala's response, and we're a lot less likely to kind of jump the gun and just override the neocortex entirely. Whereas with extroverts, it's a lot more likely, and that's also more likely to result in an action that they wouldn't have taken had they not been under that emotional high or low. And I want you guys to keep this in mind because it's a good transition over to key principle number 2, which is discovering your strengths as an introvert, doing a little bit of self-discovery, whether that's taking personality tests, reading up on your personality, and just really understanding all the different strengths and aspects of it. And then not only that, but also developing this very strong, impenetrable sense of self. And that's something that I've had to develop over the past couple of years, because in the beginning, I didn't see myself quite the same way that I do now. And again, to make this more tangible for you guys, what I mean is that there are certain archetypes of the introvert that you can kind of take on and adapt to your own personality. So one common archetype, for example, that I myself fit into is the man or woman of very few words, where we don't really like to speak, say 90% of the time, and we keep our thoughts and emotions largely to ourselves. So a lot of this archetype tends to feel emotions very passionately on the inside, but it's just that from an effort versus reward perspective, we're not really willing to waste a lot of our energy to get involved in discussions and to speak up a lot. But for a small portion of cases where we do feel like something needs to be said and we feel very deeply about something, we won't hesitate to say it, and we can be very outspoken in those scenarios and probably do very well to win arguments, solve disputes, and be the rational voice that everyone needs to hear. And that's a part of me that I can really resonate with. I'm not gonna list all the so-called archetypes in this video. I'm just here to give you an example of what those archetypes could be and what sort of roles you can kind of fill into your personality to really build this strong sense of self. Once you identify those core archetypes that you identify with, you want to really make it real for yourself and own your introversion. So what I'd recommend is write down some of those traits and do whatever feels comfortable. So you could just write it down every morning. You could speak those aloud and make sure, as I said, that you're looking at your introversion as a strength and not a weakness. And my third and final principle, which is my personal favorite, is sorting certain activities into different categories based on how comfortable they are for you to do. So the first category is always something that you're very comfortable doing and you just feel like it's a natural role for you. So for us introverts, that could be stuff like planning, could be stuff like researching, or basically any other activity that we can do with ample space and time without many distractions and without other people infringing on that sense of independence and privacy. So these are the activities that should form the basis of your workday. So for me in my business, it could be building systems or designing beautiful solutions to problems that my clients face. Basically, this first category is the stuff that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning, and that should form the basis of your workday. The next category is stuff that you're slightly uncomfortable with, but you're still okay doing for the sake of growing your business. So some examples might be client relations, could be reporting, customer service, or any sort of selling or pitching. And that stuff's super important for your business. And my advice is to automate or delegate the majority of those things, so you're not constantly bogged down by doing stuff that's kind of unpleasant for you to do. But I would also advise you to leave a small portion of that to actually actively challenge yourself and to bring up your threshold of tolerance for the second category. Because the way that I look at it, the second category's boundaries are very flexible and can be easily built up over time. And the third and final category is the stuff that you absolutely hate and despise. This is the stuff that just makes you not feel good at all after doing them. This is the stuff that absolutely drains you and you just dread doing. So for example, one thing for me in the beginning was cold calling. For me, I did it for 1 or 2 months, and although it did help me build up some social skills and confidence, it didn't really do much to further my business, partially because of the positioning aspect, and also because I'm not naturally really gifted at starting conversations with strangers and forcing conversations when I really should give it more thought. Where I thrive is building deeper relationships with clients and really getting to know the person before I get anywhere near the pitching or selling stage. The same thing goes for example, networking events and speaking engagements. So let's say you're at an event and everyone wants to talk to the same 2 or 3 speakers. I don't really find that it's worthwhile for me to expend all that energy fighting other people just to exchange a couple of shallow words with those speakers. So when I was at an event, I made up my mind to not fight the crowd, to not speak to as many people as I possibly could, to not try to conform to the extrovert ideal, and instead I would wait it out till the crowds almost dissipated. Then I would just walk up to the 2 or 3 people that I wanted to speak to the most. I would exchange business cards and make a little bit of small talk, and then I would just immediately head home. Then I would do a lot more research on the person and their company and just their quirks and core values, and like I said, just get to know their unique problems so I can map back solutions to them. And that ended up usually getting me a lot better of a result, and I put a lot more time and effort and care into speaking with that person that a lot of extroverts actually didn't end up doing. And that ended up being one of the main ways that I got my foot in the door with a lot of the bigger brands that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to work with as a complete beginner. So to sum it up in a few clear words, focus most of your time and energy into your strengths, leave a little bit over for your weaknesses, but for the vast majority of cases where you can't complete those weaker activities, you want to go ahead and automate and delegate accordingly. So hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. I wanted to make it brief and to the point. If you guys want, I can do a somewhat longer video somewhere down the line where I actually screen share and show you a lot more of the information and tips that I've applied into my own life regarding personality types and introversion. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys back here for the next one.